high probability areas. When you measure a previous range, there are two high probability areas within it. The first one is the last down candle responsible for the structural low. That is a high probability area. The second one is the last pullback before closing above a structural high. That is a high probability area. Of course, in a cycle of high highs and high lows, right? So this is another previous range. Uh, Now, this is the last down candle responsible for the structural low. That is a high probability area. But, however, plot twist. I said that there are two high probability areas to execute a position from, but in this previous range, there is only one. There is no pullback. There is no valid pullback. We didn't get a closure here below that. We did not get a closure below here either. So that's fine. Completely fine. The previous range is still valid. There will be some previous ranges where you'll only see one high probability area. That's totally cool. We see another previous range. We got that. This is the last down candle responsible for the structural low. Around here, yeah. This is the last pullback before closing above a structural high. Two high probability areas. Another previous range. This is the last down candle responsible for the structural low. This is the last pullback before closing above the structural high. Now, I even forgot to mention this, but so as for the last pullback, oh, that's because there hasn't really been any examples. Okay, cool. Was there an example here? Yes. Okay, cool. So as for the last pullback, the last down candle of the last pullback is also a high probability area too. The last down candle of the last pullback before closing above the structural high is a high probability area 2. So we get that closure above. We have another previous range. This is the last down candle responsible for the structural low. This is the last pullback before closing above a structural high. That is at, so these are two high probability areas, and I also said the last down candle of the last pullback before closing above a structural high is a high probability is a high probability area 2. See another previous range. Yeah. Take some stuff out the way. This is the last down candle responsible for the structural low. This is the last pullback before closing above a structural high. This is the last down candle of the last pullback before closing above a structural high. That's a high probability area. So within a previous range, there are two high probability areas to execute a position from. The last down candle responsible for the structural low, and the last pullback before closing above a structural high. The last down candle of that last pullback is a high probability area too. This is within a cycle of higher highs and higher lows. Now the principles are just inversed in a cycle of lower highs and lower lows. Let's see if I can find some examples for you. This should, that should be perfect. So we have a previous range. This is the last up candle responsible for the structural high. That is a high probability area. I don't think that's a pullback, is it? Hold on. Boom. Boom. No closure. No closure there. So even in this scenario here, there's only one high probability area. That's fine. Keep it stepping, right? So boom, boom, boom. So we have another previous range. This is the last up candle responsible for the structural high. Do we have a... No, we don't have a pullback before the closure below. So that's only one area. We have another previous range. This is the last up candle responsible for the structural high. And this is the last pullback before the closure below a structural low. The last up candle of that last pullback is also a high probability area. Mm, boom, 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 boom. So we got another previous range. The last up candle responsible for the structural high is a high probability area. Uh, no pullback below. No pullback before the closure below a structural low. So that's fine. Let me do that. We have another previous range. We have the last up candle here responsible for the structural high. And we have the last pullback before closing below a structural low. This is the last up candle of the last pullback before closing below a structural low. So that is how you identify high probability areas.